So today we're going to be doing our cinnamon Choux to make our pumpkin spice cream puffs. So the first thing we're going to do is get our liquids together. And so just on our scale, we're going to tear out our pot. We're going to add 60 milliliters or 60 grams of water. We're going to add 60 grams of milk. That should take us up to 120. That should just be a little bit of liquid. All right. Then we're going to add our 53 grams of butter. A little bit more. A little bit more. That's good. All right. Then we'll get that over here. We aren't going to turn it on until we get our flour ready. So in here we're going to put our flour, salt, and cinnamon in. So cinnamon, we're just going to do 1 little teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we'll change it to a ½ teaspoon. I think half should be plenty for this amount. We just want a little bit of cinnamon in there. Then we're going to add about 2 grams of salt. That's good. And then we're going to add 75 grams of bread flour. There we go. All right. Now at this point, we're going to turn on our liquid. And all we want to do is melt that butter, but we don't want to quite bring it to a boil. We just want to make sure all that butter's melted first. So don't get it to a boil, don't get it too hot. We don't want to reduce this down. We want to make sure that it stays the same amount of liquid as we started with, and if you start boiling it and everything, it'll start reducing down, and then we won't have the right amount. So we just gotta get these guys in. Now what's really cool with the Pate Choux is after you combine it, what happens is it steams up in the oven. We cook it at a high temp, about 400 degrees for about 20 minutes, and it will puff up and become hollow in the middle. That's due to all that steam. Bunch of different cultures have this. In Italy, it's called a spingi. You can make it, or this is basically how sopapillas are made. But if you noticed how fast that butter's melted, because we only have a little bit of liquid. And we just want to make sure all of that is together. Once all of that butter's melted, we will do our next step. All right, all of my butter's melted. Now I'm going to crank it up and bring it to a boil. This shouldn't take too long because, again, we don't have that much. All right, we've got a hard boil. Now I'm going to turn off the heat, add all of my flour in at once and all of that stuff, and I'm going to start mixing. And it should make a good paste in here. as all that flour soaks up all that liquid. And you can work through it, make sure it all gets mixed together. Make sure there are no lumps of flour in there. Notice how I'm just kind of pressing it down against the bottom. And I want to make sure that cinnamon's kind of mixed throughout too. It should all be homogeneous. All right. Now that I've got that going, I'm going to turn my heat back on low. And I'm going to continue to cook this. And what I'm looking for is there should be a film that starts to form on the bottom of this pot. That lets me know that my patty choux dough is ready. And I'm just keep mixing it around, keep pressing it down, make sure everything is nice and together. You can see I've got that little film going. I could turn off that heat. Now all I want to do is get this guy to cool down. So I'm actually going to take it completely off the heat, put it on my metal table. Metal conducts heat very, very nicely, so it's going to pull out a lot of heat really, really quickly. If you're in a restaurant, you can always throw this in the cooler for just a little bit. We're just getting that to cool down. Add eggs to this, and we make sure that those eggs don't cook. If this is too hot, we'll get scrambled eggs and flour, which is not very appetizing. So we'll pause this for a second. We're just going to let this cool down. All right, so we've got our patty choux relatively cool. I can put my hand on top of it. It's warm, but it's not burning me. So I know that it's at least cool enough that it won't cook my eggs. So we're going to add the eggs one at a time. We'll first crack them in a secondary bowl. Make sure we don't get any shells in there. And then we'll add them one at a time and mix them in. What we're looking for is the consistency of a thick cake batter. And don't worry, it'll look like it's not going to come together. Just keep working it. You can do this in a stand mixer. We're just doing it by hand so you guys can get the feel of it. I think there's something about doing stuff by hand where you get to learn how it feels, how it comes together, how it looks in the different stages. So as you can see, that egg came together. We're still very, very thick. So we'll add our second egg. If you add all of your eggs at once, we actually don't know how many eggs we need. It depends on how liquid is still in there, how well that flour absorbed all of our butter and liquid. All depends on how many eggs we need. It all depends. We're just trying to get it to that thick cake batter before we actually do anything with it. We need to get it nice and pipeable. So this recipe will call anywhere from 1 to 4 eggs. My guess is it should be 1 to 3 or 2 to 3. So we're still a little bit on the thick side, so I think we're going to add 1 more egg. Again, it could take all 4. It depends on the size of our eggs, how hot it was when we added it, all those fun things. Gentle, don't let it slosh everywhere. Every so often I'm just scraping off my paddles so that it also gets mixed in well. Yeah, this one looks like this is going to be about the last egg. You can see that it still has some consistency, but it just sort of barely drips from my spatula. Again, it's just this really nice thick cake batter is what I'm going for. Right about there. So that was my 3 eggs, I believe. All right. And that looks like a beautiful patty choux. All right. So for our next step, we get our parchment paper. On our baking sheet. I'm going to prepare a piping bag. If you guys want to, you can try piping it from here. You kind of scoop up, lean over your hand. The easier way I found, especially for starters, is you can just take it like this, and all of my batter just goes right in there. If done right, you should easily have this done in class, baked off, and ready to go. I just want to make sure I get all of it out of there. All right. Going to cut off the tip real quick. And then when I pipe these, make sure you always hold from the top. And what we're going to do is just straight up and down and make basically little dollar-sized dollars. They are going to spread in the oven, so we don't need to get them too close to each other. And if you need to, you can always take a little bit of it, dollop it down in the corners to hold down the parchment paper. I'll show you guys how to get rid of those little tops at the end. If you want, you could stop and kind of do a swirl. That helps break them. The big thing is whatever size you choose, just keep consistent. That way they all bake at the same time. Perfect. All right. Now for our ones that have the little tips on them, you just put a little bit of water on your finger and you can knock those down, kind of respread them out. What that helps do is just make so you don't have a little top that gets a little bit burnt. But notice how they're holding their shape relatively well. That's basically like the perfect batter consistency. I could shape them up just a little bit. And then these guys are going in the oven for 400 for about 20 minutes. So this is our 20 minutes later. These are our cream puffs. You notice how they popped up so far, or they look a lot bigger. And I'll pull one apart. One of these kind of not so pretty ones up at the top, just so you can see what the inside looks like and what we're going for. So you can see this guy. You open him up, nice and hollow in the middle. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going to fill with our. All these guys feel really, really nice. But this is everything we're looking for in these guys.